Well, hi, everybody. My name is Charlene Margot, and I am co-founder of nonprofit The Parent Venture. We are delighted to have with us tonight Meg Josephson, who's going to be talking to you about helping kids and parents break free of people-pleasing and perfectionism. Take it away, Meg.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and really excited to be here. I'm going to start by sharing my screen and then I will pull up my slides, present full screen. Okay, so thank you again so much. I want to just mention briefly, we'll have time at the end for a Q&A. So if any questions pop up, just keep them in the back of your mind or write them down, and hopefully we'll have time to get to them at the end. So I want to thank Parent Venture for having me. And I saw in the chat the age ranges of your children. So that's really helpful for me to know, and I appreciate it. And we're going to talk about my book, Are You Mad at Me? How this applies to you, to parenting. And please know I'm only scraping the surface. I could sit here for 4 hours, but I think I would begin to bore you. So if this topic it resonates with you, I encourage you to read my book, Are You Mad at Me? It has a lot of tangible tools and practices that I hope you can revisit. So let's get into it. Our overview of our time together. My presentation is about 40 minutes, broken up into two parts, and then we'll have time at the end for a Q&A. So part one, a common root of people pleasing and perfectionism. But before we get into that, I want to just say, if you're here today, we already know you're an amazing parent. So I am not here today to tell you how to be a parent. You know how to be a parent. You know how to be a great parent. And I would imagine many of you may resonate with just the noise that's already out there. There's a lot of parenting advice, there's a lot of parenting books, and I'm not here to tell you what to do tonight. I'm actually here to just share some knowledge about people pleasing, perfectionism, and it's actually the goal today is to understand where our own people pleasing patterns come from as parents, and to move forward with more clarity and compassion in our relationship to ourselves and also to other people. And the point that I really want to hit home is the work that we're doing here on ourselves tonight is also for our children. When we are healing our own wounds, we're also we're being better parents. And when we are speaking to our children and with compassion and we're understanding their people-pleasing patterns, we're healing ourselves as well. So I want that to be a relief. I want it to be liberating that the work we're doing goes in all directions. So it's not, is this for me or is this for my kid? It's for everyone. It's for both. It goes both ways. So I want to start by getting a little bit in the nervous system. I want to talk about a few threat responses that our body has. So, our body has four responses to a threat: fight or flight, which I think many of us might be familiar with, freeze, and the fourth one is the fawn response. And this is what tonight's presentation is going to center around. And the fawn response was actually just coined in 2013 by a psychologist named Pete Walker, so it's actually quite new. And the fawn response is a brilliant and unconscious survival mechanism where when our body is detecting some sort of threat, whether that threat is real, like there's a lion in front of us, or it's perceived, we appease the threat. We try to be liked by it, we satisfy it, impress it, prove ourselves to it. So, whether or not that threat is in front of us or it's perceived like our friend didn't text us back, or our boss or a child's teacher is being a little cold or standoffish, our instinct is to please. It's to say, "Are you mad at me?" or to be helpful to them, overly helpful to them, or maybe to compliment them so that you can go back to feeling safe. And so the fawn response really says, my safety comes from pleasing you. I can't feel safe until I know we're good, until I know we're okay. So here's just a quote from my book summarizing what I just said. And it really is important, this part of real, remembered, or perceived. So oftentimes people are like, well, why would I be in a fawn response if I'm not actually in danger. It doesn't actually matter if it feels threatening to the nervous system. We can slip into this state. So a key part of the fawn response, it's really leaning into the threat instead of away from it. Unlike the other three responses, which tend to be about avoiding the threat in some way. It's the only threat response that we're going toward the threat. So why is no one talking about it? This in it of itself could be the whole presentation. I think for many reasons, it's so common, yet it's so under-recognized because it is so rewarded. It's the only threat response that we receive external validation for. Maybe some of us were told growing up, oh, you're such a good girl. You're such a good boy. You're so easy. You know, we're praised for being good and easy. And that carries into adulthood in the workplace or however that may look. So it really keeps this cycle going of we fawn, we appease, we get praise for it, and then we crave that validation of being seen as good, and then it keeps that cycle going. It's just to say fawning works, and a really important part of the fawn response is that we need to abandon ourselves in order to do it. We learn that the other person's discomfort is more important than our own, that we can't feel okay until the other person's okay. And we're disconnected from questions such as, what do I need? What do I think? What do I want? And as a parent, I'm sure you can relate those our children being able to answer those questions. It's really important being able to think for themselves and figure out what their passions and interests are. And perhaps as speaking to you as your own person, maybe you have felt disconnected from these questions yourself because maybe you spent your childhood pleasing and appeasing and you had to abandon yourself too often, so you never got to look inward to those questions. So with the fawn response, this idea that we're always looking out. We're constantly scanning people's moods. What do they think of me? Did they think my joke was funny? Did they like me? And when we're doing that all the time, we're disconnected from our internal world, and that's a key component of the fawn response. I want to also mention, we're going to get into this later into the presentation, but the fawn response isn't bad. It's protective. It's brilliant, actually. And sometimes we need it. And we're going to talk about that later, but I just like to say it in the beginning because you might already be thinking it. And the fawn response isn't to say we're suddenly going to be mean or cold or, selfish. It's actually the goal is being connected to ourselves so that we can be connected to other people in a real way, in an authentic way. And sometimes we need to fawn, whether it's for safety, whether it's to please our boss so we can get a paycheck and pay our rent, whether there are so many real life ways that we need to fawn. This work is about noticing when we're fawning, when we don't need to be, when we're actually safe. Because when we're fawning all the time, that's when it becomes exhausting, leads to anxiety, burnout, overthinking social interactions. And as I'm speaking, whether that's you, whether that's your child, that's sort of the lens that we're seeing this through. So, with that being said, I want to talk about some sort of fawning flags, sort of clinically, what I would kind of look out for if someone was people pleasing a lot, they were a big perfectionist. Here are some things that I would sort of look out for. So, overthinking, ruminating. Why did they put a period instead of an exclamation point? Are they mad at me? Did I say the wrong thing? Oops, sorry about that. Silencing our needs for the comfort and happiness of others. And again, especially as caretakers, sometimes we need to do this, right? Someone has to take care of the child. But when we're doing this all the time in all of our relationships, as I'm sure some of you can relate, it makes us feel resentful, burnt out, avoiding conflict, not being able to have hard conversations, kind of brushing things under the rug because you don't want to upset the other person. Because remember, the fawn response finds safety in being liked. Hypervigilance of other people's emotions and moods, feeling like you're a chameleon in social settings, like you don't really know who you are because you're just morphing yourself to be what the other person wants, like overextending yourself and then feeling resentful, being overly agreeable, saying yes when you want to say no, fear of being seen as bad or getting in trouble. I think this is one especially that stems really young. I know I personally, I share a lot of personal narrative in my book as well, and I talk about my really early experience of feeling this, of feeling like my teachers, oh gosh, I'm going to get in trouble with my teachers. I got a B, so they probably think I'm stupid and now they're going to yell at me. And always being on high alert of authority was really big for me and has been really big for me. And that then translated into fear of my bosses, feeling like if any boss ever messaged me saying, "Hey, do you have a sec?" That would mean, "Oh my gosh, I'm getting fired. That's what's going to happen here." So that fear of being bad is very timeless and can isn't just childhood. Being drawn to toxic relationships and environments, especially if that feels like kind of home to your body. And overall, like I was speaking to, feeling disconnected from yourself, feeling like you're performing in your relationships. And this is kind of the irony of people pleasing is that uh, it's not really doesn't always work in the sense of when we're always being the perfect on version of ourselves in our relationships, it can kind of keep people at a distance. People don't really get to know what's happening internally for us. So it can be quite a lonely experience of people pleasing. Um, we don't get to show people the more messy, vulnerable parts of ourselves. So that's why I think this is beautiful work because it allows us to have deeper, more real, close relationships, which we'll talk about more. So once again, we're not trying to erase the fawn response from our system. Sometimes we need to fawn, whether it's for safety or a paycheck. And I say that multiple times because I just think it's really important. We're not being delusional here that it's just, I'm only focused on myself. And I fear sometimes in the psychology space, we've overcorrected in how we talk about people pleasing. It really is about being connected to ourselves while being in the world at the same time and finding that balance. It's being connected to ourselves so that we can be a good partner and a good parent and friend and neighbor. But we can't be that to everyone. And so that's really what we're doing here. So the first step is really pausing and noticing when we're fawning and asking, do I need to be fawning right now? That's always step one. Knowing that sometimes we need to, so it can get a little confusing of, well, is it helpful right now? Just by inserting that pause, we're already breaking the cycle, and asking ourselves, what's necessary here? Do I need to be doing this right now? Just that short step is already a really great place to start. We're going to talk a lot more about this in the second half of the presentation. I also want to talk about we are surviving within systems and oppressive systems. And so, whatever identities that you may hold, I want you to consider how that has also fed into this foundational need to fawn, whether it's your gender, your sex, your race, your neurodivergence, if expanding on that, if that's unfamiliar to someone, if you have autism or ADHD and you often feel like you need to mask yourself in social settings so that you can fit in, whether it's your sexuality, class, disability, religious identity. The thread through all of these is we all just want to belong. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel loved. And so the fawn response is a really useful and brilliant way for us to morph ourselves to feel those things. So I use this more as a prompt. If you hold a marginalized identity, how has that affected you and perhaps kind of forced you to blend in or to neglect yourself in some way to feel safe? So a really key component here, I see a lot of my clinical work through the lens of internal family systems. And what that really means is we are made up of a bunch of different parts, And all of these parts play a role in our system. It's like this great big family within us that's working really hard to keep us safe. And I think of this part of us that people pleases and is a perfectionist as this scared part that's really trying to protect us. And sometimes, as we've talked about, we need this part, and other times it is working overtime and thinks it needs to be working when it's actually safe. And so that's really what we're doing here is we're not trying to get rid of this part. We're not trying to get rid of this part in our children. We're not trying to get rid of this part in ourselves. But we're actually trying to create a relationship with this part. It's almost like this little being that lives within us that we are learning how to soothe this part and manage it, knowing that sometimes we will need it to come out and help us. And a lot of the times it just needs to know it's safe so that it can get some rest, knowing that it will be needed sometime soon. So I want us to kind of see that through the lens. And I have an activity later that you can do with your child or children to kind of make this a visual activity with them or with yourself as well. I want to talk quickly about redefining trauma, and this may be resonant with your own childhood. If you grew up in a home that you were often walking on eggshells in, and that has now created this need to please in yourself. So I want to just kind of shed light on that. So fawning is born from complex relational trauma. That's a lot of words, so let's break it down. Complex trauma is a lot of small moments that happen again and again. And I say small in the sense of it just feels normal. Like a parent calls you names or screams, or I grew up in a home that had active addiction in it, and my dad was quite a volatile person. So it felt it kind of was just my everyday. It felt really normal. It wasn't necessarily these like big life altering moments that were happening every day that, we maybe see in mainstream media. But it was the everyday moments and not having a safe place to return to. So that's a really key part when we're feeling unsafe as children and we don't have that safety to return to, we don't have that safe parent, it can leave quite an effect on the nervous system. And that's happening again and again and again and again. So it's not like I think there's a lot of anxiety with parenting now of like, oh gosh, I yelled once and did I ruin my relationship with my child? No, no, no. This is complex traumas. It's a daily, if not multiple times a day, these explosive or damaging events that are happening. Relational trauma means in relationship to other people. So it's usually in the caregiving system, but it's also at school. If your child is bullied at school, if your child feels left out at school, that also creates this sort of relational impact where, oh, I don't feel safe. And we'll talk about where can we go from there. And so another really important part to definition for this is trauma is about how you perceive the event. It's not about the event itself. So I think a lot of us think, well, I didn't experience X or Y, and so maybe it doesn't matter, but it's not really about that. It's actually about how the nervous system makes sense of it. And so this also explains why two siblings can have a very different childhood because it's about the nervous system perception. So I want to shed light on that because I don't think that sort of category of trauma is talked about too much. So some common dynamics that I are familiar to me personally and that I witness clinically and mostly adults that are processing their childhoods, caregivers who are unpredictable, critical, distant, angry, and volatile. If you had a constant feeling of walking on eggshells, if you felt a constant need to be perfect or good in order to minimize conflict and maximize safety. And if, as I'm reading this, you were like, oh my gosh, that was so me growing up, please feel free to say in the chat if this is resonating. If you learn to fear conflict because it was only dealt with in extremes, like maybe screaming matches or silent treatment, You weren't allowed to feel certain emotions. Maybe your caregivers' volatile emotions were kind of the center of the room. But when you were felt angry, it was you're being dramatic or go to your room, and you were kind of punished for feeling those emotions. And it's not black or white. I talk about this in my book of kind of the complexity of processing. If you resonated with those dynamics growing up yourself, of like, oh, but it wasn't all bad all the times. And I felt that a lot myself. And I almost felt like I wasn't allowed to process it if it wasn't all bad. Like I didn't deserve to acknowledge those experiences. And so there can be loving moments and there can have been hurtful ones. And this isn't about blaming or staying stuck in this. It's really acknowledging it so that we can move forward. And so I just want to acknowledge that sort of nuance. It's not black or white. So I want to talk a bit about sort of the different roles that I think of for people pleasers, it kind of shows up because it can show up quite differently for people. So I'm going to go through these quickly. In my book, I have whole vignettes about each one, but I don't want to take up too much time for this. So the peacekeeper, a core belief of the peacekeeper is when people are in a bad mood, it's my fault. It's my responsibility to fix it. The performer, I need to keep up with the version of me that others, with the version of myself that people expect me to be. So feeling like you're performing in your relationships and no one really knows you. The caretaker, I find value in being helpful. If I care enough for them, maybe they'll care about me. The lone wolf, it's unsafe for people to really get to know me. I need to handle things on my own. Often that just means it's too scary to let people in, so it's safer to handle things on my own. The perfectionist, I need to be perfect to be loved. Something is inherently wrong with me. And the chameleon, which my box is covering, I must blend in and make myself small in order to be safe. Just an overview of those archetypes. And I don't think of these as personality types, but rather just patterns. And you might resonate with all of them. You might see yourself in a few, but they're just really to give us an understanding of how people pleasing shows up for ourselves. And so the brain is really detecting perceived danger and is unconsciously behaving in a way that has worked. So what ends up happening is if those roles were really familiar to us growing up, we're going to keep doing it because it worked. It provided genuine safety. And so I really think of, okay, if you were to say, why do I still do that then? Why am I still like this? I get that it protected me then, but why do I do it now? I think of it as sort of a software update in that was a really useful mechanism. And now our bodies haven't gotten the memo that we're in a new time and in a new place and that we don't need to be doing that all the time anymore. And so it's like our bodies need that software update to get the memo that we're now safe. And in the next part, we will be talking about how we can begin to do that. Before we get into those techniques, I want to acknowledge social media because if you have teenagers, maybe you yourself may resonate with just the role of social media in this "Are you mad at me?" thinking. I could have written a whole chapter on social media's role with "Are you mad at me?" thinking. Instead, I touch on it briefly, and I think there's a few layers to it. Number one, I think we now have so many ways to connect. We have DMs and texts and FaceTimes and Snapchats if your child has Snapchat. And I think because of that, there are a lot of ways to feel forgotten. So it might be, why did my friend like my other friend's post, but not mine? Why did my friend see my Instagram DM, but not respond to my text? Why did they just like my message instead of love my message? We have so many sources of validation. And because of that, those are hits of dopamine that we're getting. When we're not receiving that dopamine that we're anticipating, it feels like a letdown. It feels disappointing. And then we can it starts to trigger, are they mad at me? Did I do something wrong? And then there's another layer of, we are not supposed to be perceived by so many people, let alone strangers. And we are not supposed to be so accessible. I don't know about you. I feel what I'm personally, what I'm witnessing in my practice is I think we're all very tired. I think we're all very overloaded with information. I don't think we're supposed to be talking to so many people and receiving all the information that we are receiving. And so there's this layer of, okay, I'm going to put myself out there, my life, my body, my partner, my career, and my home, and I'm going to let people tell me if it's good enough. And so what ends up happening is social media sort of reinforces this people pleasing cycle of I'm looking outward to feel enough, I'm scanning to feel enough. With social media, it's just happening on a much bigger scale. And so it just plays such a big role. And the techniques that we talk about in this next part will also apply to social media of really looking in first before looking out to feel enough. So now what? Part two. So I want to be really clear. Healing these patterns, it's not another thing that you need to be perfect at. I often hear this in my practice of like, well, I meditated for 5 minutes and I was anxious. Like, what am I doing wrong? Or it's as if it's like this checkbox. And if you were really good at healing, you would feel fine all the time. And it's not that at all. It's actually really allowing these emotions to exist, allowing these thoughts and overthinking thoughts to be there, and changing our relationship to them. And I really just want to convey that if you're a perfectionist, if you're really hard on yourself, if your child is a perfectionist and really hard on themselves, of course it's going to apply to the healing. And it's just something to notice. And that's because awareness really is the foundation of healing. I can't say this enough. Our own awareness is is everything. It's free. It's a free tool, and we really can't heal anything until we've become aware of it. Remember that I said the fawn response is unconscious, so we don't even know we're doing it a lot of the time. So by having awareness of it, we're already healing because we're bringing it from the unconscious into the conscious mind. Uh, and just by doing that, we're already doing something different that we haven't done in 30, 40, 50, 60 years of our lives. So please celebrate your awareness. Celebrate noticing these tendencies and these patterns in the coming days of, wow, look at that. I wasn't noticing that before, and now I am. Another big piece of this is this concept of dipping our toes in discomfort. When we give ourselves bite-sized, oh, sorry for the typo, portions of discomfort, our bodies can properly digest it. This is really, really important for ourselves and for our children. You may have heard this sort of practice of, increasing our ability to handle discomfort. We're not doing that by going headfirst into discomfort. For example, if you've never sat in silence before, if your child has never sat in silence before, we wouldn't say, sit in silence for 1 hour. Probably not, right? We'd probably start with maybe 3 to 5 minutes. And that's because if we started with an hour, it would probably feel really shocking to our bodies. It'd feel very uncomfortable. And then our bodies would be like, what are you doing? Take me back to what I know. I hate this. And we wouldn't want to do it again. Another example, if we've never set a boundary in our lives, would we start with our very volatile parent or a friend who's very hot and cold? Probably not. We'd probably start with a really close and safe friend that would be very understanding. So this practice of being able to just take small bites is really important, and I want you just to keep that in the back of your mind. So, I like to picture, I mentioned earlier this part of ourselves. I'm just checking on time. Okay, we're good. Imagining this part of ourselves as an inner critic, this little being, like I mentioned, within us who is scared and is trying to keep us safe. Because remember, this little being's core belief is, well, if I'm perfect, there's nothing to criticize, right? We all have this part in us. Our children have this part of us. We have this part of us. And I also want to say that if your child is a people pleaser or a perfectionist, this doesn't mean that you screwed up. I want to be really clear. Just by existing in society, we're going to have this part of ourselves. And so it's not something to shame ourselves for. We're creating a relationship with this little being. Um, and that's really the first step to breaking out of this pattern. So, an activity to do with your child, or maybe just for yourself, is to imagine this part of you. What does this part look like? Are they a fictional character? Are they an animal? What does their voice sound like when they're scared? What are they wearing? Are they big? Are they small? What color are they? Just really visualizing this inner critic. I don't know if any of you have are Studio Ghibli fans, but I have My Neighbor Totoro here. This is what comes to mind for me for my inner critic, just this sweet, pure, innocent being who's really just trying to keep me safe. So this is what I always picture. But it could be a fun activity for your child or for you. Um, and to me, I really like this because it invites in, oh, we're not trying to shame ourselves. What's wrong with me? Why am I like this? Why am I so hard on myself? We're not adding more shame to the equation because it doesn't make that emotion go anywhere. It just actually adds more tension to it by allowing that part to exist and having a relationship to it. It really simplifies our inner experience quite a bit. So, another really important element to understand for you and your children is that nothing will ever be enough for this inner critic. Uh, and this has so many layers to it, but there's this term called the hedonic treadmill. So let's give an adult example, and then I can give a child example. Let's say that you've been working really hard for a promotion. Or whatever like equivalent resonates with you, just some sort of status thing that you've been working toward. And let's say you get it, and but before you got it you were like, oh, gosh, once I get this, my life is going to be so good. Or maybe it's like that house that you've been saving up for, or whatever it may be. um, okay, so you think once I get this, then my life will be perfect. Then I'll be enough. Then I'll have done enough. And then it happens, and it does feel really exciting for some time. But then, after a few months, maybe you go to work or you show up to this club that you're part of or this group that you're a leader in, and it starts to feel quite normal. It starts to actually just feel like your everyday. So then the mind will say, okay, never mind. Let's move the goalposts. Once I do this, then I'll be enough. And the mind just keeps conjuring up new scenarios and new benchmarks to finally be enough. And I want to just say that that's normal. That's a normal tendency of the mind. That's just what the mind does. It's a challenging part of being human. There's nothing wrong with you. But it's an important, I think, trait of the mind to know about yourself and about your child. Um, for example, let's say your child said, I want to get this GPA at school. And then they work so hard and they finally get it, but then they hear that their friend got a GPA that was a little bit higher. Okay, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I get that? Nothing is enough. It's rooted in comparison, it's rooted in feeling threatened. And this isn't to say we don't ever try or we don't ever have goals, but it's managing that voice while we are going toward those goals, knowing that that voice will always have something to say. I want to shift gears a bit to topic of conflict. I think for many of us that resonate with this topic of or this question of, are you mad at me? Maybe growing up, you didn't witness conflict being handled in a healthy way. I know for me personally, conflict was very explosive. And then I'd go downstairs and my parents would say, well, so what do you want for dinner? And it was just never talked about after the fact. So I would handle a lot of conflict on my own in my room. And what ends up happening when that happens again and again is that the child starts to make sense of it by believing they caused it to happen. When conflict is just brushed under the rug, there's no acknowledgement after the fact. It starts to go from, I did something bad to make dad upset. That's the only way this can make sense. When that happens again and again, it goes to, I am bad. Something about me is so bad and so wrong that it makes people upset. And so what ends up happening is then as adults, we carry this belief, and if this might resonate with you as an adult now, this belief that, okay, when I get into a conflict with someone, it's over. The relationship's over, it's ruined, there's no going back. And so we end up avoiding conflict at all costs. We never say how we're feeling. We get scared when there's any sort of confrontation because we learned that conflict is unsafe. It makes so much sense. And so I really want to say here that conflict isn't bad. It's actually inevitable and it can be very healthy, especially in relationship with our children. Because when there's a little bit of friction every now and then, and that's what I mean with conflict. I don't mean relationships that are abusive or toxic or there's constant cyclical conflict. I'm talking about a little bit of friction here and there. It really means that both people, there's enough space and safety for both people to be themselves. And it invites in opportunity for repair. So, what is repair? Repair is going back to the moment of conflict and acknowledging what happened. So, let's say you picked up your child from school, you were hangry, exhausted, it was hot outside, and you snapped at them. Maybe they forgot to put on their seatbelt, and you yell at them in the moment. That's okay. Okay, that happened. Things get quiet, things get tense in the car. Um, and then you get home, you settle down, you get a glass of water, you get a snack, and you're feeling a little bit better. Going repair in that moment would be going back to what happened. Honey, I just want to say I'm really sorry you. Sorry for yelling at you in the car. I was just hot and hungry and tired. I love you. And I'm sorry. That wasn't your fault. You didn't make me do that. That's repair. It's even a simple acknowledgement of what happened. And what a beautiful thing. I know for me personally, if I were to recall a moment of conflict with one of my parents and that repair were to happen, I would think, wow, I feel safe with you. I feel like we can talk about things. I'm witnessing that you can take accountability. I'm no longer blaming myself for things. So repair is really such an opportunity for closeness. And in that way, we can celebrate when there's a little bit of conflict because it means there's opportunity for repair. I also want to talk about boundaries quickly. I think we've also overcorrected with how we talk about boundaries. I think they are talked out in a very closed off way. Um, and I actually think of them, certainly in some relationships where they're hurtful or abusive, boundaries are for protection. But in our safe relationships, boundaries are actually a way to feel closer because they say to the other person, this is what I need, and this is how I can be in a relationship with you long term. They're really, it's boundaries are really an act of emotional intimacy because we're letting people in on what is going on for us. And for people pleasers, where we've had to be perfect, that's a really big deal. Um, and so let me get into some examples. I want to be clear, boundaries are not about controlling the other person. It's about actually what we will do. So a boundary is not, don't call me while I'm at work. A boundary is, I want to let you know if you call me while I'm at work, I won't be able to get back to you until my lunch break. That's what a boundary is. It's saying, here's what I'm able to do. For an example, if you are giving your child screen time and the time is coming up, and you say, "Okay, honey, it's time to take. I'm gonna give me the computer back," and they say, "No, I want 5 more minutes." Maybe you say, "I'm going. This would be about you. I'm going to do this. I am going to take away the computer on the count of whatever or whatever it may be." And that's just an example. Probably different based on the relationship with your child. But the point being, it's not to say you need to do this, it's what I will do. Or like if you are jumping on the table, I'm going to come over and I'm going to take you off the table. Versus get off the table. So it's clear, it's direct, and while it may evoke a reaction or annoyance or discomfort from the child or from whoever, that's what a boundary is communicating. I'm going to talk briefly about the practice of leaning back because I have a little bit more I want to get through and I want to make sure we have time for Q&A. So the practice of leaning back is, I think another way we've maybe overcorrected is we kind of talk now about oh, but just like whatever. They're gonna do what they're gonna do, and how can we control it? I think of it more as leaning back of we're not being passive in our relationships. We're actually releasing urgency and we're leaning back. We're not leaving the room. We're just leaning back so that we can see the situation a bit more clearly. So we're noticing what can I control in the situation and what can't I control. And so by slowing down our inner process, we're really able to see the situation from a clearer lens. So this is kind of a standalone concept that I just wanted to bring in. This practice of leaning back is really this practice of self-regulation. I talk about this more in the book, but I just want to briefly introduce it. And it's also an opportunity to talk about the power of the pause. I talked about how awareness is really foundational to our healing. But if there's one thing for you to take away for yourself to integrate or for your child to integrate into, okay, what can I do? What can I take from this? Is to practice inserting a pause. Inserting a pause before your reaction, before over apologizing, before saying yes, and pausing. What do I need? What do I want? What's happening here? Um, Maybe that looks like soothing yourself before asking someone for an opinion. What do you think of this? What do I think of this? What do I need right now? It's really a practice of looking back in before immediately looking out. And as we know, the fawn response trains us to always look out. So just by looking in, we're already really breaking the pattern. And the cool thing about this is it's a daily practice. We can do it anywhere, all the time. And it really is about just slowing down our inner process. I have an acronym in my book called NICER, which is supposed to be funny because people pleasing, you're trained to be nice. Let's be nicer, aka more mindful. So it's really about first noticing. Notice what you're feeling. Notice that you're feeling something. Notice that something has changed. Maybe let's give an example. Um, let's say that your friend invited you to go to dinner tonight, and uh, you notice immediately that you are exhausted and that you don't really want to go. And so you say no politely, and let's rain check. And you notice that you immediately start feeling guilty. Oh, maybe I should have said yes. Am I a bad friend? How could I have done that? Just noticing the guilt, okay? And you're then inviting it to stay. This is allowed to be here. Nothing's wrong with me for feeling this guilt. I'm allowed to feel this. And then you're having some curiosity about the guilt. What triggered this? Well, I said no, and I feel like I'm a bad friend because I said no. Okay, what does this feel like in my body? Do I feel any heat or tension in my body? Maybe that it's embracing this guilt. This is, I think, the most uncomfortable step for people. Um, you're safe. This is okay, as if you were kind of wrapping that part in a blanket. And then returning your focus to what's real and true right now. Um, any sounds in the room, the feeling of your feet on the ground, this feeling of your breath. So what this allows us to do is allows us to process what's happening internally, but to finish with what's actually real, because our mind can take us to different scenarios of maybe they're mad at me, maybe I did something wrong, and the R brings us back to what's actually true in this moment, in the present. So I want to close off with some uncomfortable truths, and then we'll lead into the Q&A. So perfect doesn't exist. You can't control how people perceive you. You can't control the narrative that someone has of you. People will misunderstand you, will misjudge you, will dislike you, will maybe be mad at you. You can't deeply know yourself and be liked by everyone at the same time. You can have an open heart and be kind and not be best friends with everyone. No matter how much you explain yourself, people may still hold an opinion of you that you disagree with. And so, because these are true, the practice is not about controlling these, but soothing the scared part of ourselves through these truths. And that's really the main premise of this work. So that might sound like it's safe to be misunderstood. It's safe to be seen trying. If your child feels like they need to be perfect at something to even begin, maybe you say, you can be seen trying. It's okay to be seen as imperfect. I can be an imperfect beginner. I no longer need to manage people's emotions and reactions. I release the need to control other people's perceptions of me. It's safe to not be liked by everyone. This is uncomfortable, and I can survive discomfort. So thank you so much. I know we're going to get into the Q&A, but I just wanted to offer you can connect with me on Instagram. I have a newsletter. And if this is resonating with you, I also have a workshop on my website where I have a whole pre-recorded workshop and 7 pre-recorded guided mindfulness exercises where we actually practice this material together. So I just wanted to offer that, and we can get into the Q&A if that works for you, Charlene.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meg. That was really amazing. And we know because everybody who signed on is still here. So
That's good news.
it's really good news. And listen, when I was 2 years old, my mother dubbed me the family worrier.
Mm.
So you can imagine how the rest of it all rolled out. Um, we have lots of really good questions, Meg, from our audience. Very thoughtful. I think they're ones that will resonate with a lot of people. So let's just see how we do, okay? Here's a
Beautiful.
great question. Mom asks, whenever my son and I argue, he ends with, do you still love me or are you mad at me? I
Mm.
always tell him that I'll love him no matter what. He's 15. This has been going on for about 3 years. Is he fawning and should I respond differently?
Well, my immediate reaction to that actually is, wow, how beautiful that he feels safe enough to ask for that. Like that, he's expressing a need of wanting to know that you are still there and still love him and that everything's okay. And I actually think it's so beautiful that uh, you can share that together. And it reminds me of sort of this distinction between I talk about this in my book, but I'll summarize it here: reassurance versus validation. So reassurance is, do you still love me? Are you mad at me? Are we okay? And then you say, of course I still love you. No, I'm not mad at you. Yes, we're okay. And then that anxiety goes away until next time. It could be because it will come back. Whereas validation is, oh, I'm hearing that you're feeling a little anxious after our disagreement. And it might include some reassurance of, honey, of course I still love you. But it allows opportunity to slow down with that emotion. So it might say, oh, of course I still love you. Are you feeling some anxiety that you want to talk about? Or what is it that you're feeling right now? Like, let's allow some space for that to be there. So again, it's still providing that reassurance of, yes, of course I love you, and it gives a little bit of opportunity for that emotion to come to the surface if there's anything there. But overall, I would say beautiful. Yeah, your child just wants to know that you're there and you are there, and that sounds so beautiful.
All right, thank you, Meg. Because I remember when my son was little, he got to be kind of a praise junkie. And I realized that I had to back off from just always saying he was doing a good job. Really, we had to sort of break that pattern.
Well, that's the thing, is that reassurance seeking can become quite addictive.
Yeah.
And it because it's not getting to that root emotion. So that's why it's important to slow down with what's happening and understand, is this anxiety? Is this anger? Is this resentment? Is it fear? That is the more sustainable path forward. And yes, it might include a little bit of comforting and validation, but we're really slowing down and pausing and not just immediately, oh my God, of course I love you, because it can become quite this reassurance seeking cycle.
All right. Thank you, Meg. Good advice. So here's something I know it happens to all of us. It's a great question. The writer says, this absolutely resonates with me, but on an additional side, my resentment builds up and eventually comes out in a non-constructive way, and I kind of end up shooting myself in the foot. Is
Mhm.
that something that you hear? And if so, how can you help us overcome it?
Of course, you are so human, and that is so normal. I think of resentment, I think of all emotions as a messenger. They're sharing some piece of information for us to interpret. And resentment is so important for people pleasers, for caretakers to understand, because resentment is saying, there's a need of mine that isn't being met right now. And when that is happening again and again and again and again, and we are shoving that down, of course, the it's going to spill over and we're going to react uh, because you're a human being, of course. And so I think there's a little bit of nuance where, yes, it would be great if, you're feeling tired, that's your unmet need. It'd be great if you were able to sleep in, but maybe you can't because you have a young child. So with resentment, I think it's asking, what is this need of mine that isn't being met? Am I able, how can I meet this? In an ideal scenario, how would this be met? Okay, and now how can I actually meet this, maybe in a smaller way? And if at the very least you're not able to do something in that moment about that unmet need, can you at least acknowledge what's happening? I'm feeling this because I have been on all day. I haven't had a second to myself. I barely got to eat lunch. Just acknowledge and validate why you are feeling that way. That is already soothing that emotion. And I think it's also regulating in small ways. Is it taking inhale for 4, exhale for 6 while you're driving your child to school, while you're cooking dinner? It really happens in the small moments, but more than anything, of course, you're feeling resentful and just explore that. Have some curiosity around it.
All right. Thank you, Meg. Great answer. Okay, for all of us who've had kids who are a little bit perfectionistic, this is for all of us. Question: what do you suggest we say to an 8-year-old boy who keeps erasing his homework and saying, that letter doesn't look good, and he just keeps rewriting his letters and redoing his work?
Mm. It definitely sounds like that perfectionistic voice is coming out for him. And I would say, actually taking him through, maybe pausing, putting the pencil down if there's time to do that. It sounds like this is a homework at home, like in the evening situation. So I'll just, maybe I'm assuming some things here, but I'll just take that as the example. Um, I think it's maybe putting that pencil down and having some curiosity about what's going on for him. Is it that it doesn't feel good enough? Is it, I wonder, it would be like, well, what do you imagine would happen if you put that imperfect R? What's the worst that could happen here? I also think there's something to be said about modeling, like, oh, let me try and doing a really bad R and seeing, oh, it's okay. I'm allowed to do that. Um, but more than anything, I think it's showing or having some curiosity around what emotion is coming up around this imperfection, and is it maybe creating a little being for that perfectionistic voice, is so that he can be mindful of that in the way that an 8-year-old can be mindful of that perfectionistic voice. Um, and can that voice actually just sit on his shoulder while he's doing homework? And it can talk, oh, that R looks so bad. Thanks for telling me. I appreciate it. Is it give it having a stuffed animal be that perfectionistic part? So that he can kind of create some distance between that voice and himself. That's where I would start.
I like that. Maybe a little stuffed owl, somebody to help out.
I love that. Yes. Beautiful.
All right. So, Meg, so many good questions. We're going to try to get to two more because these are
Mhm.
important.
Thank you.
Um, Question is, does your advice apply any differently or more so to neurodivergent, especially autistic individuals? Are there any approaches that work better? Now, I know that could be a whole event, Meg.
100%. It could totally be an event. And I would say absolutely. And in general, uh, what I'm saying, it might look a little different for everyone, neurodivergence or not. Just clinically, I look at every client very differently based on their trauma history and once I get to know their nervous system in general. So I would say, you know, there there's a lot of overlap between the fawn response and neurodivergence, rejection, sensitivity, hypervigilance, all of those things. And so I would say, in general, probably going a bit more simple and taking out some information. Simplifying the practices is typically my approach when there's already this information overload happening for a child or an adult. But also, I trust you in that as well as the parent of what does resonate with your neurodivergent child, what techniques do work, um, and without knowing too much context about your situation, I would say it certainly just depends on the person. But in general, just uh, simplifying is usually my go-to starting point.
All right, thank you, Meg. Okay, one more quick one. This is an important question. We hear this often, actually. The writer asks, my daughter, now a freshman in high school, has a habit of only doing something if she does it well. And if she doesn't do it well, she won't do it at all. What are any approaches to help with this situation?
Oh, it's so relatable. That was me as a teenager, as well. It felt honestly so embarrassing to try and to not be good at it. And I know that doesn't have to stem from a critical caregiver. It can also just be the personality of the child, and they can hold themselves to a really high standard. Um, I would honestly say the similar sort of approach as the 8-year-old doing their homework, writing with their handwriting, of having awareness of that perfectionistic voice. Um, and know too that as a parent, you can say it a million times of your best is good enough and just give it a try. That was my mom. She would always say those things to me, and it just didn't matter to this voice that was just so perfectionistic. Um, and so I think uh, also like allowing them to go through that in a way, but offering that sort of kind of challenging that the validity of that voice, where it's not telling the truth. It's trying to protect you from rejection. It's trying to protect you from being judged by your peers or get in trouble with a teacher. This voice is trying to protect you. But what is the worst case scenario that could happen here? I always like that sort of framing for perfectionism. And also, I just want to add, perfectionism is paralyzing. It makes the irony of perfectionism is that we hold ourselves to these high standards and we end up doing less because we're like, oh, I can't mess up. So maybe we procrastinate with perfectionism, or we just totally freeze up. So with perfectionism and that sort of freeze response, starting really small is helpful. Of like, okay, honey, you are interested in trying this new instrument, but you are really scared of being bad. What's the first step? Maybe it's just looking at the case across the room, instead of saying just play. Maybe it's, well, let's just look at it. Okay, can we slowly open the case? Can we slowly take it out one small step at a time? That also applies for the neurodivergent question as well.
Yeah, lots of practice.
Yeah, small, tiny, accessible steps so that each step feels safe. Yeah,
Yeah, that's great advice, like taking your kindergartner and driving by the school.
exactly. It's exactly
Okay,
that. We want it, small bites of discomfort, remember. Yeah.
yes. So Meg, we are really at the end of the hour, but do you have time for one more question? This
Of
person's been
course.
trying
Yes,
really hard.
yes. Please.
It's a question we can all relate to. How do I shake the feeling of dread when someone close to me is mad at me because of a disagreement or argument?
You are so not alone. I even had a slight pit in my stomach from the question itself. It's such a relatable feeling. First of all, you're not alone in that feeling. And I think it's a reminder that, that's going to happen in our close relationships. And this shame comes up. What is shame? Shame says, I am bad. Something about me is bad. That's what shame is communicating. Um, and so I really think of it as, it's not, oh, what do I do to fix this or prove myself to this person or correct this? Um, of course, if we need to have a conversation or confront the situation in some way, we will. But the first practice is, how can I soothe myself through this? What do I need? Maybe it's putting the phone down. Maybe it's it before immediately saying, "Are we okay?" Or put the phone down, take a second just to be with that inner experience. It feeling bad doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It's that's an uncomfortable emotion. So presence is not about always feeling good. You being present with that shame or guilt or dread, it means you're just noticing what's there. So it feeling uncomfortable actually means you're doing it right because you're being with what is. So that's what I would start there.
All right. Well, thank you, Meg Josephson, for a brilliant hour. Thank you,
Thank
everybody, for
you.
being with us. We can tell that everything you've talked about tonight, Meg, really resonates. There's a lot of us people-pleasing perfectionists out there. So
Not alone. You're not alone. I appreciate it. Thanks for all your thoughtful questions and for having me, Charlene and Bev. So appreciate it.
exactly. And you can feel the love here. So Meg Josephson, again, thank you, and everybody being on for us tonight. We are grateful. Take care. Pick up a copy of Meg's book. It really is helpful. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody. See you again soon. Good night.